It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good.
Theater has been a part of our society since the beginning of time. But theater has also changed a lot since the Greeks. It is now a complex art form with several parts and pieces that work together to create a piece of live art. In this video, we will be breaking down the University of Texas at El Paso's production of Monsters We Create from their 2019-2020 season. Monsters We Create was a new work written by Georgina Escobar in collaboration with UTEP's Fall 2019 playwriting class. We will be showing what the process is like to write, create, and produce a new work. So let's start at the beginning.
My process for Monsters We Create started with the title. I got to El Paso with nothing but a title that I had agreed upon with Kim, who was the director. And we chose that title because of the abundant possibilities behind the metaphors included in that title. Monsters created a lot of metaphors, and also the idea of something we create, and we create together. So it was a launching point for us, at which point I brought that in first day of class to my playwriting class, my students, and launched them into a pictorial investigation and anything else that percolated from that title.
During the class, the playwrights would brainstorm together to create the entire concept of the play. They would build the world, build the characters, and Georgina would guide them into the creation of a play.
The next time we met, we basically divided the board up into different categories, mainly character, dialogue, theme, environment, and so on. And we shared our images together and then started pasting the images and the quotes where they felt they belonged. Character development is incredibly simple and yet very complex. It's a good question in the sense that in order to build a character that is dynamic, that can fit into whatever world you throw them at, in whatever circumstances you throw them at, is that they have to have a very definitive want or need, and there has to be something in the way of getting that want or need, so that the character is always driven by some sort of obstacle, by some sort of conflict. And that conflict can be from very small, very contained, from somebody who wants to be seen, to and what's playing against it is their own insecurities, to a woman who's trying to battle the entire government and bring it down, and what's in her way is the fact that it's just one person versus the nation.
There were several read-throughs that happened of various drafts. This allowed the playwrights to hear their words and start to make changes.
And in producing it, obviously also the fact that you had a whole design team that was playing alongside us, that was taking our prompts and reading pages and being involved in the collaborative aspect of it. That was my favorite too, because I love designers. So for me to be able to have them in the room when we were doing writing prompts and having them listen to the songs that were inspiring some of the writing was incredibly exciting. That's how I prefer to work. It's just not typically how mainstream theater works, but hopefully we're moving towards that.
Now, while the play is being developed, the designers have already begun their design process. For this project, each designer was in a collaboration and industry study class, where they brainstormed their design ideas through collaboration while the play was being workshopped. This leads us to our first production meeting. Production meetings allow for the designers and the directors to communicate and create the show.
So the first production meeting really set the tone for what the rest of the process was going to be like, which was the emphasis on collaboration. We were all working together, from the playwrights to the director to all of the designers. Everyone was really ready and eager to work on this project and hear what the concept was about. I think the fact that this play is set in El Paso and also written by those who live here helped everyone get excited about what we were going to be working on. We were all ready to create this futuristic land which resembled home.
The first production meeting is always incredibly nerve-wracking, but it's also one of the most creatively uncertain parts of the process. You've read the play yourself and you know what you think about it, but the first production meeting is really when you start to try and piece together what it's going to look like from everyone else's perspective too. So it's chaotic in the sense that there's so much that could happen. There's so many unknowns. And so you just start to put it together as you go through it. And it's so exciting for you to walk in, have your own ideas, and then also pick up what everyone else is thinking about it. So that's also really great.
Production meetings are pretty exciting for me because I think it's like the moment where you start like seeing what the director wants and kind of the direction that you're gonna head in. And it's really exciting because the director sometimes can be really, really excited about the project and can like inspire you to do something really cool that you didn't think that you were gonna like do starting out. But it can also be kind of scary because if you don't understand what the director's going for, kind of like, oh no, am I really capable of doing this? Like, can I live up to what the director wants, you know?
First, the director explains their overall concept for the show, and then each designer presents their design concepts. During these meetings, decisions are made about all aspects of the show, from seat count to the color of the floor. While the designers and the director work on creating the world of the play, the director and the stage manager are also focusing on auditions.
The audition process for stage managers are very different than the audition process for actors. For us, it's about connecting with your team. So I had one ASM and we worked together to create all the audition paperwork. There has to be an audition form. You have to have your sign-up sheet. You have to have a way to organize the sign-up sheet to where you can contact everybody and make sure everyone's contact information is correct. A lot of the times too, you have to check in with your director and make sure you know what their expectations for the audition process is. Do they like to have a stage manager in the room? Are they going to have an assistant director with them? Is the playwright going to be there? There's lots of questions to make sure that you and your director are on the same page so that everyone feels comfortable during auditions. One of the biggest problems we had was finding a space for auditions, which can also be a challenge. Sometimes you want to make sure you have a big enough space for the actor to be at a comfortable distance from the director. You need to make sure you have seating in the waiting area. There's just a lot of different things to take into consideration. And it's kind of like the first big stressful moment in the production process because you've already been in production meetings, you already know what the show is and things like that. But the audition process is the first like big task for the stage manager. So it's really exciting and it's like a big jump off point for us.
The first day of auditions, performers come in with a monologue and perform in front of the director, and in this case, the playwright. The director and playwright then decide who to call back for a second round of auditions, based on who fills the part the best. During callbacks, performers are paired up and read group scenes from the actual script. These are called sides.
I don't know. I mean, it takes a lot of, I feel like a lot of courage, you know, because it's just like the whole like going to do it. Make sure you don't mess up on your lines or your monologue, I should say. And I know, I guess be genuine and yeah. And then I guess the whole after factor, not knowing whether or not you will get the part. I think like the anticipation of waiting to find out like am I gonna get the part or not is like what was killing me, like this anxiety driven.
Once the cast is determined, we move into the first rehearsal. This is an important day for the stage managers, director, actors, and even designers. This is the first time we will hear the cast read the script.
The first rehearsal is so important because it sets the tone for the entirety of the rehearsal process. So I love first rehearsals. I love that first day of school energy where everyone is slightly anxious, really excited, generally, usually happy to be there. And so it's my job to harness that energy and to say, okay, this is our space. This is the space that we're going to be working in for the next 3 weeks, the next 6 weeks, you're lucky 8 weeks, um, and to create the space and the working conditions for everyone to do their best work. So that means that everyone has a voice in the room. That the room is a place to take risks. The room is a place to fail. The room is a place of collaboration. And that's really important to me to establish that on the first day. So, how I create that space really depends on the show. There are times where I will have the whole team, everybody in the room, get up on their feet, walk through the space, move through the space, just take a moment to really be present with each other, to really connect to each other, to listen. For this show, for Monsters, before we started, I actually read a poem by a friend and colleague, Andrea Cote Botero, that spoke to me and articulated the vision and my vision of the show in a way that was so profound. And it was really important for me to share that with the team before we started anything. And then in terms of the table read, I love to open it up for discussion. It's important to me that I am very clear on my vision for the piece and also very receptive to all of the new ideas that are going to be coming at me. So I will say, we will talk about what is this story about? What are the events? What are we hoping that the audience feels? And what am I hoping that the audience gets out of this? And I will say that up front to the cast, to the designers, so that everyone in the room has a shared vision of the story and has a shared vision of the specific story that we're trying to tell with this production.
While the rehearsal process begins, the designers are finishing up their design and the various shops are starting to build. The scene shop focuses on building and painting all the scenery and props for the show. The lighting shop works on hanging and focusing all the lights and placing the speakers for sound. The costume shop pulls and builds all the costumes. All the designers read through the script and then create their design based off of inspiration from the script and the director's concept. Each designer goes about their process differently.
Like I go back a lot to the director's concept. And I try to kind of just take it apart and then see and try to understand like what the director wants. Um after I kind of like try to figure that out a little bit, I then go like I literally go through Pinterest because Pinterest just is like a pot of like different ideas. And you can start off in one section and kind of just start like taking apart like different like you start like taking a bunch of like ideas from different people and then kind of just puzzling it all together. So when it comes to a design, it kind of goes into that, where I start looking for different ideas and try to piece it all together to what the director wants.
Me personally, whenever I get a new design assignment, I of course read the play, but the first part of the actual design process is I go through and scour the internet for different images and different things that I kind of pick and choose from the script. If I've read the script and I go through it again, I just kind of circle things and try to get a sense of what this world looks like and go through the internet, look at concept art, look at buildings, look at paintings, look at anything that I could possibly find that gives me the same feeling of what I imagined when I read the script. And normally you would try to read it out loud so that you can kind of understand how the words kind of fit together. So when you're looking at scenery, it's what people are going to visually see on stage. And for this particular production, it was so many different locations. So you start kind of piecing it together of what does this look like? And so I go through it and I make sure that I understand that feeling of what it meant to me first so that I could bring that to the director and then get into the finer details of what is placed where and what it looks like. So that's my process.
When it comes to designing, every show has a different research and idea process, but for Monsters, it really started with me researching how lighting lives and exists in our city. And lighting comes in all different forms, from the Chico's Taco sign that we see lit up at night to lights leading us into downtown along the freeway I-10. So I really wanted to emphasize on this and bring it onto the stage because we don't really notice how lighting is always and constantly surrounding us. After that, I went into looking at comic books and futuristic art because I wanted that overall lighting to have unnaturally bright colors and to resemble that sort of unnatural feel.
For a scenic or costume designer, once they have their concepts, their next step is creating sketches and renderings to communicate their exact ideas to the director. And most set designers build a 3D model. The lighting and sound designers create their plots, which show where all their lights and speakers will be placed. The projection designer begins to brainstorm designs and positions for the projectors. The scenery and costume shops then begin to build the show. The lighting shop place their instruments and speakers. The projection designer starts mapping, and the show starts to come together.
My favorite part of designing Monsters We Create was honestly 2, because it was the beginning part where everything was a little bit more like up in the air. There wasn't so many things that were solid. So it was really just throw anything that you could think of at the wall and see what stuck. And that process for me was very, very freeing. It was see what is new. And with a new play development, there had never been anything like this done before. So, especially for me. So it was throw anything at the wall, see what sticks, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, start over, see what it can. And the other favorite part of the whole process for me was towards the end when we started filling the space with all of the nitty gritty kind of little details. The whole structure was there, but it's really those smaller things. The shoes on the fence, the kind of set dressing around the sides, the different paint elements that really kind of stuck the details in, and the graffiti, which was amazing to paint. I loved it so much. But all of those smaller details are really what kind of gave the atmosphere that I was looking for. And that's kind of the best part of it. It's kind of seeing it all kind of come together to tighten the stitches around the edges. And so that was a really great time.
My favorite part about designing for Monsters was really coming up with the idea of 2 central lights over the stage acting as chandeliers. Just like we would find lighting surrounding us in everyday life, I wanted the element to stay the same in the story. The lighting chandeliers on stage also help create a different location within one area of the stage. So the Radford House lights were actually a piece of wood surrounded by these light bulbs that hung, and the light bulbs gave this warm amber glow, and I wanted it to really represent the togetherness and the willingness of this group of friends to come together on this day to keep a promise and to work with each other to overthrow a power that is way bigger than them. And over the cell, which represented the stamps world, I had 3 fluorescent tubes in this linear pattern to really have that feeling of cold harshness that women had to go through there. So I wanted them to have no warmth there, because it really, that's how it was. That's what they were going through. They all had to go through that alone. So I wanted the lighting to represent that as well. Another part that I think was my favorite was working with Olivia, the scene designer. We created these lines under like the side of the stage, so I put lights under there, and during specific scenes we were able to glow light literally through the stage, and I think it was a nice little surprise for everyone to see.
I got to do a lot of different things that I didn't think I was going to do. I started off as a puppet designer and props, right? But it kind of turned into like all these different like problem solving, which is normally what a puppet designer does and also a props designer does. But instead of like just, oh, okay, this person needs a book and this person needs like a pen here, like it became like, oh, I need to make a lantern that like glows, but it's also a severed head. And it became like all these kind of small things that normally you wouldn't see in a play. But then like it just became like all these cool projects that I didn't expect I was going to do. So doing all that was really, really fun.
All the while, rehearsals have been in progress. The rehearsal process varies from show to show, but in this case, we had 8 weeks of rehearsal and 1 weekend of tech. The rehearsal process begins with table work, where the actors, director, and playwright sit down and closely examine each scene within the play. This is where the world is established, and given circumstances are discussed for each character.
Oh, I've got to say, the collaboration, the community, in Monsters, oh my gosh, it was such a great group of people that were working together. We were working on a show that was about El Paso, which is the city that we're in. So there was just an energy in the room that was palpable. And I just loved coming to rehearsal every day and exploring the text and having the playwright in the room with this group of people was a really special experience.
Just everyone there, production, technicians as well, director, or my castmates. I don't know, I just look forward to being able to be there and just feeding off of everyone's energy. It's just a fun night.
Next, the actors get on their feet, and the director begins blocking rehearsals. During all rehearsals, the stage management team stays busy, ensuring that rehearsals run smoothly. This includes organizing all the rehearsal props, creating and sending the schedules, recording blocking, and sending out rehearsal reports. Just to start.
I will have a plan, a rehearsal plan before I have gone into auditions based on a script breakdown that I do. So I will break down the script in a very detailed format where I have a column for each French scene. And in my French scene is when a character enters or exits. And I will have a French scene and I will say, these are the characters in this scene. This is the event of the scene. This is what the scene is about. And I do that for me just to sort of map the entire script. So I'll do that, and then I actually build my rehearsal schedule based on those French scenes and the breakdown of the script that I've done. So I will say, okay, I know that I have my scene A that I need to block today. And then by the end of the week, I need to get to scene D. So I'll do scene A one day, scene B, scene C, scene D, and then on Saturday, we will run scene A through D. And I like to think about sort of starting in mini chunks and then adding on. So we get one mini chunk done, and then we add on another one, and then another one, until we have an act, and then we can run an act. And then I will do the same thing for Act 2, and then we'll put the whole show together. And I always like to make sure that, of course, we've done a few runs before the designer run. I would hate to put actors in a position where the first time they're running a show is a designer run, so that we have run the show a few times before the designer run. And then, go back after the designer run and look at what's not working, what we need to clean up. I like to get a shape of the show pretty quickly, so then I can go in and clean things up and tighten moments and figure out what moments work and what moments don't work, sit in different spots in the theater, etc.
Personally, as a stage manager, I love the rehearsal process. It's my favorite part of the show. It's why I got into stage management. For us, whenever we are in rehearsal, our job is to take notes of everything going on in rehearsal so that the entire production team can stay inside the loop. It's also our job as the stage manager to write down all the blocking, which means you write down every move an actor makes, all of your actors. And then the assistant stage manager, usually their job is to keep track of props. They also are the ones like backstage helping the cast find things. A lot of the times they're also the ones actually typing up the rehearsal report so that you can kind of share duties. And then overall, it's really our job to just sit there and be at assistance for the director, for the cast. A lot of the times we have our little stage manager kit that has basically anything you could ever need in rehearsal in it. So a lot of the times in rehearsal, you have different actors coming up to you asking if you have this or that. So you're really just there to serve the production and make sure everybody stays inside the loop.
Well, the rehearsal process was pretty interesting. I know, like, the first day rehearsal, we kind of did some acting techniques that I never was really familiar with, and it's just very interesting to just just let go and just try to have your character go ahead and take a hold of you. So rehearsal process was really fun, especially getting into the lines and just getting more in depth with your character. So that was really fun.
After weeks of table work and rehearsing, we start doing runs, so the director and playwright can see how the show is progressing as a whole. For a new work such as Monsters We Create, the script is constantly changing during the rehearsal process. The cast is frequently given new pages, and the design team is constantly updated. The ending of Monsters We Create changed 3 times during the rehearsal process. Rehearsal process ends with the start of Tech. Tech Week is the most intense week in theater. The cast is finally on a full set, or pretty close. The lights are on, sound is playing, and projections are running. The stage manager is in charge of calling all the lights, sound, projections, and any scenery shifts. All this information is in their prompt book, which includes their blocking and calling script.
Tech is the most stressful time for a stage manager, but also the best part of the experience, at least for me personally. Once we get into tech, normally for the stage manager, what your job is to figure out the timing for all of the cues that have to be called but also make sure that the schedule is running smoothly, that everybody is staying happy, and that your director, of course, is happy. And then also just trying to coordinate everyone to have this show finally come together. It's when you have all your elements, so it's a lot to manage. That's why it's always great to have your assistant who's there to help backstage and make sure the cast is happy and communicating to you what's going on backstage while you're sitting in the house trying to work with lighting and sound and projections on figuring out cueing. So a lot of the tech process too is writing in all of your cues into your stage management book. So you have your script with all your blocking and all the lines, and then you write in where each cue would go, and then you practice in tech calling each of these cues and making sure the timing is right with the director, is right with lights and sounds and projections and how what they want things to call. For our process, it was a little bit different because we didn't have our director on the first day of tech. Our playwright was standing in basically as co-director. So a lot of the first day of tech was kind of weird because it was just spacing out like transitions. And then once our director got back the next day, then it was we like really delved into tech and looked at all of the moments, looked at how the lights and sounds were actually working together and made all of the edits that way.
Tech Week typically runs on a tight schedule. There is usually a paper tech or dry tech, where cues are discussed between the designers, director, and the stage manager.
I think overall lighting helped create the mood and establish location. We were able to create transitions through many technical elements, and lighting contributed by really establishing certain color palettes for different scenes. It also helps when creating effects of things that may not be present on the actual stage. For example, in the show, we had helicopters and cars passing by, and I had to create these effects that actually had light flashing in front of the audience. So it kind of gave that illusion that this world is bigger than us, and there was a helicopter flying across on the stage. And another effect that I had to do was actually creating this black light sort of glow, kind of similar to that of an arcade, just because we had a graffiti and we actually found paints that would allow that graffiti to stand out. So by adding that color of lighting, I was able to create this sort of glowing transition in between a scene change.
Next, the cast is added, and we go through cue to cue in order to examine every look and time transitions. Last comes dress rehearsals, where the actors are finally in costume and makeup, and the show is being run just like a performance would be.
Well, personally for me, how I got into character was try to dissect the character the best that I could. Another thing, like for Flip, they are partially blind. So a way that helped me kind of enhance that characteristics of them is I had gotten some wide out mesh colored contacts, which are like the mesh is like you can still see through it, but not like completely. So it's like very, very just like blurred, like kind of distortion of it. I feel like that kind of just helped me get into like his partially blind setting. I just feel like it just with the set, it just kind of helped alternate things and how like my movement would be versus like me without the contacts.
At last, opening night arrives, and performances begin. Performance schedules vary for every show. Some run only one weekend, others a month, and some even years.
Who are you? I'm
But closing night always comes eventually, and the cast takes their final curtain call. But the work is not done yet. There is still strike. Strike typically happens immediately following the show, as soon as the audience clears, or sometimes it happens the next day. It's insane how quickly so much hard work is gone. And that is the magic of theater. It's temporary, a fleeting moment, but the power of live theater is unlike anything else.